Thank you. I'm with the Advertising Club of Richmond, here to share some information on our mentorship program. We are currently looking for mentees who are interested in furthering their careers through one-on-one mentorship with creative professionals in the area. Our mentors bring at least 10 years of experience within anything from brand management to design to creative direction. You'll meet once a month with your mentor on your own schedule, where you'll have the opportunity to gain insights on how they started in the field, interviewing tips, and portfolio reviews. The application process for mentees is super easy. Ashley's actually going to post the application on your Facebook page. You will need a reference letter, but that can come from anyone in your network. Applications are due October 18th, and we throw a really awesome happy hour where you'll be paired with your mentor and meet other mentors and mentees. You also are offered a free year-long membership to the Ad Club, which includes all of our workshop events and networking happy hours. My name is Cassie. Ashley has my information if you'd like to any extra questions answered, but we hope to see you guys soon. Thank you.
How we doing, guys? Can y'all hear me? Everybody well rested? Not anxious at all? No one's stressed? So brands have always had the responsibility of providing consumers with a good product, a reliable product, and a rewarding customer experience. But today, with all sorts of data and security issues, automation, and the spread of misinformation perceived as truth, consumers have to ask themselves, do I trust this brand to do the right thing? So we're lucky to have 3 members of Edelman DC's digital and integrating marketing team here today to talk to you guys. First, we have David Benbassett. He's a senior strategic planner. It's David right there. We have Jen London, who is an executive vice president. And the leader of the team, Laura Gentles. So give it up for Edelman DC, guys.
Thank you. So nice. And we're really impressed with your professional setup and that you're in the dark up there. So, we don't feel insecure. Jen likened it to a SoulCycle class, which I don't know what that is, but I guess it means you're in the dark. So thank you so much for having us. We are based in the DC office, as you just heard, which is kind of cool because we have a big brand practice there. We work for clients like Hilton and Taco Bell and Volkswagen. We work for a lot of nonprofits like United Way and Melwood. And I get to oversee that practice in addition to working with the digital and integrated marketing colleagues. And it's super special for me because, DC a lot of times is known for its amazing talents in policy, legislation, advocacy, but we really have a thriving brand practice there. And we have a really robust creative and planning department. We have a lot of digital talent as well across, paid, earned, and owned. So we want to sell ourselves to you a little bit today in the hopes that you guys would consider Edelman as, it gets to next spring and you start to think about what you're going to do next. And so we thought, why not convince them how cool we are by showing them like 35 charts of amazing data on brands. And then David gets to talk to you a little bit about our creative process and how we bring ideas to life at Edelman. And then we're going to show you some some case studies to just show you kind of how we do this. Here's the thing. Okay, so this data I think is incredibly interesting. They pay me to say that, but I also really think that it is. And I hope that it informs your thinking as you go to market. So we're going to tell you, Jen and I are going to show you a little bit of kind of 2 mashed up studies. One is Edelman's trust barometer. We've been studying trust for 19 years. We know that well. And over the past couple of years, there's been a trend emerging around brands, which we studied in two specific pieces of research this year. So we're going to show you some of that data. And then David's going to talk a little bit about earned creative, which is our process, how we kind of, infuse this and bring it to life. And then we're going to show you the cases. So I just repeated all that, and we're going to have a discussion. A little bit about Edelman. You might know us as the world's largest PR firm. We are that, but if you read Ad Age also calls us an A-list agency. Over the past 5 years, we've really been transforming from PR, which is super focused on impressions, to brands, and really working hard to do, just present the best ideas, the best solutions for brands across all mediums. Like I said, we're anchored in DC. We have a huge presence in Chicago, New York, LA, and the Pacific Northwest as well, and also globally. Okay, so I thought that to bring this to life, and to talk to you a little bit about, we're going to talk about trust, we're going to talk about purpose, and then we're also going to talk about earned creative, which is the way that we try to bring our ideas to life, really having them earn attention in the media. So just to sort of set the tone, and before we go into the data and statistics, I wanted to show you this piece of work that we did for the WNBA last year. And this is a really great example of evolving a brand's platform through trust and purpose, but also taking it out to the market through an earned-led strategy. So I'll just show you this quick video.
In 2018, women everywhere stood up.
We are here to say, as women, we're not taking it anymore.
A record-breaking number of women running for Congress.
A new day is on the horizon.
But on the eve of its 22nd season, the WNBA, the world's most iconic women's sports league, found that stands were empty and viewers weren't tuning in. So we asked ourselves, what if just taking a seat at a game meant taking a stand for women everywhere? So we invited fans to take a seat, take a stand, where each ticket sold directly supported organizations making a difference for women and girls. And that same ticket sent a girl to a game to see her heroes in action. Our announcement set off a wave of support. That made national headlines.
What's the message you're trying to send to young women and girls through this initiative?
That basketball is bigger than basketball. While others are shying away or stepping back, we are stepping forward. This is basically encoded in our DNA.
Just days after launch, one of our partners, Planned Parenthood, came under attack. And we stood our ground, making news that went beyond the sports page and reigniting support for the league.
Everybody is watching, and it feels like that. And then you see the numbers, that actually is like that.
Take a seat, take a stand grew support for women on and off the court, giving a new generation of fans a way to cheer for change.
Okay, so that's a piece of work that you might have seen out in your lives. It's been presented a lot recently at some of the key conferences and stuff, and we're really proud of it because I think it does really double down through that lens of trust on the brand purpose, and then it really drove business results. So quick piece of methodology here. Like I said, we've got the two studies, right? We've got the trust barometer, which all of these are available online if you're interested in any of this. So global study in 27 markets, just over 30,000 people responded. And then we have been working also on an In Brands We Trust study, which is a bit smaller. It's in 8 markets, but it's global representation, about 16,000 people. Okay, so why trust, right? Why are we interested in trust? I've probably said the word already like 20,000 times, so I'll try to stop. But we look at trust versus reputation because it's a forward-looking metric. So instead of looking at reputation or favorability, which look backwards at how people feel about brands, organizations, and companies, trust is much more predictive. So if we look at trust, we're able to say, okay, if we did this, how would people engage with us? How would they feel? Would they feel like they could trust our organization and our brand? So that's why we look at it. And in studying it over the 20 years, what we've learned is that there's these 4 dimensions of trust. Ability, is the company or the organization good at what they do? Do they have integrity? Do they act with integrity? Are they in fact honest? Are they dependable, and do they keep their promises? And do they have a purpose? Do they have a positive impact on society? So we can directly correlate those 4 areas to whether or not a company or an organization is trusted. So when we take a look at brands, like I said, we've been studying the trust in business and organizations for 20 years, and there were sort of these peaks that trust in brand was also becoming increasingly important, which is why we started to do some specific studies around that. So what we found was that there's this gap, right? So businesses are so much more trusted than government, than the media, really than any other area. And so when we started to go explore that, we were like, okay, but does that impact buying behavior? Does that impact brands? And last year, we had a study focused on brand trust, and what we saw was that 2/3 of people, and there was this dramatic jump, and this is across all demographics, 2/3 of people wanted to buy a product or a brand based on its impact, based on its purpose. That literally was influencing their decision. More than its product features, more than its product functions, the brand purpose was increasingly important. And then this year when we took a look, we saw that that was happening even more, right? People were just saying, if I don't trust you, it's not just about the purpose, it's even a step further. If I don't trust you, I'm not gonna buy your product. Okay, so taking a look at kind of why, right? You guys know all of this to be true, but why is it that trust is so important for brands? And when we talked to consumers, they told us that brand trust is more important than ever because the brands that they are engaging with and that are in their lives are playing a more intimate and a more important role than they ever have before. Right? So whether that's the product experience, whether that's the customer experience, or whether that's the purpose piece, because people don't trust government, because they're looking for brands and businesses, it's critical that brands are actually driving a purpose. That's that piece. Because they have so much data on you, they're tracking you, you're interacting with them at your most, important and intimate moments. They've got your data, they've got your phone, they know where you are. That's important. And because, people really, their vote is their wallet, what they're buying has got to work. And just another look at this, right? So when you look at what is the, besides quality, convenience, and value, people have got to, going back again to that purpose, 81% of people said, in order to buy the product, I want to make sure that I can trust the brand to do what's right. And that's, again, across every single demographic, right? People, at first when we were presenting this data, they're like, oh, so it's like millennials. Nope. This is everybody across all segments. And like I said, brands are making these bigger consumer promises. So it's very exciting to us as brand marketers, right? There's this hole in the marketplace. People want brands to step in. They're gonna buy based on purpose. And brands are out there saying we can do these things, right? You can come to my house, right, by booking through the phone. Here's a car that's electric, but is going to be much more powerful and much more effective than a gas-powered car. All of the work that Nike did to say we're going to fix society. So it's a lot of potential, a lot of excitement, but then when you ask people, are brands actually doing it? As David wrote in the talk track, nope. So 34%, only 34% of consumers right now trust most of the brands they buy or use. So there's a tremendous opportunity that's not being met and a tremendous unmet need. So I get to end on that depressing note, and then Jen's gonna take it from there and tell us how to fix it.
Great. So to recap what you just heard from Laura, so People are rapidly losing faith in all of the traditional societal institutions that matter to us, like government, and we're even seeing a drop in trust for NGOs. So the brands that we all work for or aspire to work for have this massive opportunity to earn trust in a new way with consumers, but unfortunately most of them are blowing it. So as we went deeper into the research, we wanted to understand why is this happening and what can we do in our careers to better earn trust with consumers. So we asked our respondents to think about a brand that they use in daily life and think about why they trust that brand. And so what we heard back was pretty interesting. So when it came to the product experience, the vast majority of people expected that brand to deliver a great product experience. So 87% of people said that. When it got to customer experience, a smaller majority, but still the majority, felt that that brand would deliver them a great customer experience. But when it came to, is this brand doing what's right for society or positively impacting society, that's where we saw the biggest gulf. So only 38% thought that that brand was doing something to the betterment of society. So sometimes our clients push back on this and they say, like, is that really what people want a brand to do? Do they really want us to take a stand? And the answer is yes. So more than half of consumers in our survey said that every brand should get involved on a social issue as long as it has some connection or relevance to its business. But of course, when we asked if that is something that they can personally experience or cite in their day-to-day life, only 1 in 5 could actually say that they had. So there's a huge opportunity to make a difference here. So when we looked at the year-over-year data, we did start to see this opportunity for trust chipping away. So in the last year alone, we saw a 5% drop in people believing that brands have creative and better solutions for social issues than the government. We saw a 4% drop in the idea that brands can have more impact than the government. And we also saw a 6% drop in the idea that brands are going to heed my call to action. So mind you, these are all still very strong percentages, but when you see a drop like this, we always want to dig in a little bit and think about why that's happening. So here's our hypothesis. Our hypothesis is that the bar has been raised. It is not enough just for a brand to make a statement about a social issue. People want to see real impact behind it. And to be honest, there's been a lot of examples of what I would call trust fails over the last couple of years. So I put a few of my favorites on the slide, some more egregious than others. But just starting from the top, you've got Gillette saying they're going to redefine what masculinity means. Beautiful campaign, but then not a lot of action to come out of that. McDonald's turned the Golden Arches upside down for International Women's Day, which is a lovely gesture, but didn't really do much for women. The worst one here, and my personal favorite bad ad, you guys will all know, is Kendall Jenner solving the issue, the crisis really, of police brutality with soft drinks. That was a really bad one. Marks & Spencer, a British supermarket, is throwing LGBTQ packaging on their sandwiches, but not doing anything to actually advance rights within that community. Burger King offering sad meals to make sure people are aware of mental health issues, but that's about it. And then my last, I know, is this like really depressing for you guys? And I think well, we'll get to this, but the last one I have is Audi, who ran this really beautiful and poetic Super Bowl ad about pay equity. Some of you guys will probably remember it because I'm sure you're all studying ads all the time. It was actually really well received until people started pointing out that Audi's executive committee was comprised of 12 men and just 2 women. So all of these, I think, were well done from a creative standpoint in terms of the way they were shot and the way they looked. There were some good thinking behind most of them. Kendall Jenner, I don't know what was happening there. And they had good intentions. The people making these, I'm sure, had good intentions. But people expect brands to do more. They expect them to make an impact. So just saying that you believe in something or stand behind something, but you paid more for the ad than you did to make a difference is not flying with people anymore. The good news is, and what we also say to our clients to help convince them of why this is the right choice, is that if you do actually do more and make an impact, you get more in return. There's a real business impact for you. So I hate to be heartless like that, but we always have to convince people with dollars. So we throw up charts of the stock market, which always helps. So what we learned is we did a study to basically find out if being trusted has a positive impact on business performance, and it does. We found that trusted brands in our study outperform their S&P sector index by about 5%. 5% may not seem like a lot, but for the companies in our sample, that represented $173 billion in market cap. So it was a lot of money on the line. We also learned that when the stock market takes a hit or there's some kind of adverse impact or event, trusted brands take less of a hit than distrusted brands. So they're a little bit more resilient in times of crisis. It keeps getting better. I feel like I'm on a game show convincing you guys of trust. So for brands that are trusted, consumers are twice as likely to buy their products, a new product, when it first comes out. They are more than twice as likely to stay loyal to that product, even in the face of disruption and interesting competitors. They are twice as likely to advocate for that brand to others. And they are twice as likely to defend the brand in the event that something goes wrong. So really strong customer connection comes once you've earned that trust and if you can maintain the trust. So in summary, trusted brands perform much better with their customers. They do better with their employees too. We didn't go into this a lot, but there is data to back that up. They do better with regulators, so it's easier for them to maintain license to operate. They do better with investors. They're more likely to get institutional investment to support new ventures and endeavors. They're more resilient in times of crisis, and they make a lot of money. So it all sounds great. I'm sure I've sold all of you, and when you in your jobs right now or when you move on to your next jobs, will be fighting for companies to really live up to these values. But the next section is focused on how do we do it. So David is going to talk a little bit about Edelman's creative approach and how we apply that even when we're not doing a purpose campaign. The vast majority of our work is not a purpose campaign. That's usually a special moment in time. So how do we apply this idea of earning attention, earning trust to our creative work? So David, take it away.
Sweet. Yes, so the big question, how does it actually work effectively and how does it work without messing it up? So the answer to that question, going back down the depressing route with charts, is generally not through advertising. Or I guess, not with advertising alone. I would imagine that all of us in this room have a bit of a passion for ads. We wouldn't be in a program like this or doing the jobs that we have if we didn't. But I would imagine it's not that much of a stretch to say we don't like watching or listening to them on our own time. So still, it's impactful to see the numbers here, right? The vast majority of us are trying to tune out ads, and it's even up 10% in just the last year. And what I want to stress, I think, on this slide is it's not so much about the tuning them out, it's like actively avoiding them. So 50% of people, almost 50% of us are using ad blockers, both probably on desktop and mobile, and companies like Apple are making that more native to their platform, so you don't even have a choice a lot of the time. And you can also see the numbers around streaming services, right? We'd rather pay to just not have ads at all than pay for the things that are being advertised to us. So the old way is out. The next thing, the rise of, I guess I should say, the evolution of social media has also made us a lot less open to simply listening to communications and more interested in being an active participant in the conversation. Brands, and we would like to think our brands, have gotten really good at being interactive and personable online and engaging, but the real power comes from leveraging those trusted voices, the influencers, to go out and kind of speak to niche audiences, be it about a timely issue or a specific product or a decision that is out in the world or needs to be made. Nearly 2/3 of us feel that influencers speak more truthfully about a product than the brands themselves. And while you might want to go out and get Kendall Jenner to sing your praises, because who doesn't, the real bang from your buck comes from leveraging those smaller voices, the micro-influencers, who can speak directly to your specific target, very authentically, and in their voice. So think Twitch, think TikTok, all of these smaller up-and-coming platforms that are going to be engaging. But influencers also can't do it alone. This is really a relationship, right? Trust is a relationship, and like any good relationship, you have to have a little bit of courtship. So you gotta woo people. This is something that's built over time. And I think if you haven't already, you will find that your company or your client, wherever you end up, is going to have a hard time thinking past this kind of immediate conversion or the immediate sale. But it's so important that you start to look at this customer relationship as a real journey. Our data showed that in almost every case, starting with an influencer and building up that conversation is the best way to kick things off. But from there, you really have to leverage every channel at your disposal in order to both sort of amplify and expand on the message. So you can think about from, let's say, like Instagram, right? You can send people to your website. Actually, that's a bad example. Let's say Twitter. You can send people to your website to learn more and dig deeper into your product. You can engage people in different ways on different social channels and just kind of keep the conversation going. You can get them to sign up for an email list. All of these things are great. And if somebody buys along the way, along this journey, even better, you win. But if they don't, and they just sort of keep engaging and they keep building over time, that's honestly going to lead to a more consistent, more reliable behavior in the future. It's going to pay off in the end. So you got to keep an eye on those indicators. This combination of kind of pushing the messages out there and pulling people into the conversation along that journey, that's, you know, it's cliche, but right, we're creating this kind of surround sound experience with customers at the center. But that's what really works to kind of build trust and build that relationship ongoing. You have to be careful. One, obviously your message has to be both clear and compelling. That's the obvious one. But also, you have to make sure that it's represented consistently on every channel that you're on. And that's actually a lot trickier than you may think. I know we got at least one copywriter here, but being able to communicate a brand's message, a brand's voice, tone, personality, all on the website, it's long form. It's a little bit easier. A lot of graphics also. But when you do that in a tweet or in an Instagram post, it's much shorter. So keeping all of that personality into that one little nugget can be a lot harder. But what you see here on this chart is that as people engage with you on more channels, especially past 3, not only does their trust score go up, but the actual strength of that trust goes significantly up, especially between 3 and 4 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6. You've got big drops in the amount of people who said they had strong trust in a brand's message. So again, right, as our jobs as marketers and communicators, all of this work, all of this strategy and approach that we put into getting the message out there and earning that attention is super important. But also, it's the end of 2019 and the world is on fire. And so, like Jen said, you know, there's so much distrust out there, it's not enough to simply communicate the message anymore. People are expecting us to take action, and whether that action is cause related and, you know, I'm gonna say quote unquote purposeful, or it's more about just sort of giving back to the fan base, being your brand. If you are gonna make a promise, you have to act on it. And that's becoming our jobs as strategists, as creatives, as brand managers and stewards to help our clients commit to that action on all fronts. So just to talk about this really quickly, you have Dove Men Care, who I'd say much like Gillette is kind of trying to redefine masculinity, men's role in parenting, and rather than just come up with sort of a pretty ad campaign, they actually went out and offered paternity leave. So again, coming from that employee perspective, but they are showing they are making actual change. On the opposite side, you have Heineken as a responsible adult beverage company, not just focusing on their product, but really rethinking the whole bar experience in a way that discourages drunk driving from the moment you walk in. In the middle, getting away from the purpose piece, you know, Taco Bell, we'll talk about this later, has a rabid fan base. I would say a hungry fan base, but that would make me a really dad jokey. But anyway, they have a rabid fan base, and they wanted to kind of celebrate everything about this fan base. They created an entire destination just to celebrate those people in a very, very on-brand way. So again, it's about that commitment across all fronts. Okay, so that's the last chart. But also that is sort of the strategic approach, right? That's how we go about getting that message out there. But what is our creative philosophy? And this is where this idea of earned creative comes in. So we are past the point in marketing and in the sort of culture where we can just shout out to the world and hope people are going to listen and retain that message. We believe that brands need to be relevant. They need to be valuable in a way that is meaningful so people actually want to listen. So our kind of credo here is earned-centric, social by design. And if I want to take a very cynical, that's very on brand for me, very cynical approach to this, right? Most agencies you meet are going to tell you that in more or less words, the goal is to get attention for the client. You can say that's obviously an oversimplification, right? Attention is just one of many metrics that you'll look at in a campaign or in an activation, but without attention, you can't do anything else. You can't drive any behavior. So that's the goal. But for us, our legacy as a PR company and our sort of identity is rooted in earned media and social media. And so for us, it's less about finding the most effective or efficient way to pay for that attention, and it's about being creative in a way that deserves attention. What is going to make our idea so amazing that someone is going to want to write about it and tell their fan base? How can we design a campaign in such a way that it gets picked up and snacked upon and shared in a very organic way? And it's sort of it's very cliched for me to talk about like viral marketing, but in a lot of ways, that's kind of what we're trying to do, is game the system and create things that are naturally going to be picked up and spread around in that way. So that's where that comes in. Now, sorry, 2 slides. Living that life, living the earned creative life, is kind of about these 3 pillars. It's about thinking and working at the pace, I would say sometimes faster than, the news cycle. It's about making sure that everything we do is grounded in hopefully our audience, but if not the audience, then the market, and if not the market, then the culture, and making sure that there is some meaning behind what we're doing. There's a reason for everything that we do. And lastly, it's about getting those ideas out into the world in such a way that it's not so much us, although we are trying to be the masterminds behind it, but it's the community that kind of grows and amplifies and evolves the activation to make it truly theirs and less so the brand's. But I also want to stress, since we are talking to students here and we're not, selling to people who need the, creative spiel, but these are not just, these are not just pillars. These are a true set of criteria that we at Edelman use to both ideate and evaluate all of the solutions that we have. We try to make sure that every idea that we come up with has some combination of these elements. So being fast as news, I think it's pretty clear to say, right, that's about playing off the moment, really figuring out what's driving the conversation, or kind of coming up with a surprise that's going to create that news cycle. Being built with purpose is about change. So whether that's looking at that kind of timely issue and finding a new spin on it, or taking something old and making it new, could also be pushing a trend farther than it is right now and trying to innovate on that. And owned by community is about being sort of local. It's about really knowing your audience and building in those personal stakes, and also being relatable and human in some of our creative approaches. So obviously not every idea is going to have every piece of this, and it's certainly not going to have every piece of it in equal measure, but we do try to make sure that there are elements, and you'll see them as we present the case studies, kind of what maps to what, to make sure that we have that kind of earned foundation that we think is going to give our idea legs and spread it around and make sure it is a hit. Okay, so in summary, before we get to these cases, again, this is not so much for us about like paying our way in or trapping people into listening to this message. It's about coming up with solutions that have real value to the people that we're trying to speak to, so that they're not just listening, they actually care and they want to be involved as we are involved. And with that, we can talk about what it looks like in real life. And I think, Jen, you have the first one, so I will pass this back to you.
Thank you. Okay, so the case that I'm going to talk about for you guys, it's starting with leveraging cultural currency, so trends that are happening in society today, is the Hawaii Tourism Bureau. So I do not work on this account. I think I would actually pay Edelman to work on this account instead of them paying me, because you get to go to Hawaii a lot, which is nice. So the client came to us with a mission, which was to get more people in New York over to visit Hawaii. And we found that a lot of New Yorkers, I'm a New Yorker, that's where I come from, felt that Hawaii was a little bit kitschy, more of like kind of a family vacation place. It wasn't something that like spoke to their true selves. But we also wanted to think about what is a creative way to convince a New Yorker to come all the way out to Hawaii. And so our planning team thought about some cultural trends. They found that most of the people who travel in New York are also workaholics. They travel and work at the same time. So they came up with this really creative idea about what if you like to work remote, you like to keep working wherever you go. What if you worked from Hawaii? So WFH, work from Hawaii. So we encouraged people to kind of drop the scenery of New York and work somewhere a little bit more attractive. So the results of this, 50 million earned impressions, 300 media placements, 2,000 applications to come to Hawaii and live at residences there, 61,000 first-time visitors to Hawaii, so getting people there who had never been there before. And here, the money, I always go back to the money, I guess, is $342 million increase in U.S. East Coast visitor spending to Hawaii. So, oops, sorry. All right. So I'll turn it over to...
Okay, so Taco Bell. Has anybody heard about this campaign, about the hotel, the Bell? Any rabid or hungry fans, as David said? Okay, so this is an example of something that was owned by community. So if there are Taco Bell fans in here, perhaps you know that Taco Bell has an amazing fan base. And they are always like wanting more from the brand. So that was the brief, was make something experiential, period, go. So, these briefs are like exciting and horrifying at the same time because you don't have a lot of direction on exactly what that meant. And we knew a couple of things because we work closely with Taco Bell. So we knew that they'd done a lot of experiential stuff through partnerships. You may have seen they did like a fashion show with Forever 21. They'd done a lot of partnerships with esports, partner. And that was good, but they wanted to do something a little bit deeper and something a little bit more authentic to the brand. So the idea that we came up with and pitched to them and that they bought was, what if we made a Taco Bell hotel? So what if we just made a completely immersive experience? From the moment you booked to the moment you went to the moment you woke up in the morning to went to bed at night, everything you were doing was a touch point for the brand. And they loved it. And they loved it because, and this is another important client insight, because it was a total white space. They hadn't been in hospitality. They'd been in sort of every other niche industry. They'd done sports, they'd done fashion, they'd done all sorts of other things, but hospitality was something that was really untouched for them. So it was a great idea. As we say, it was very easy to describe in one sentence, which is like this: we're going to make a Taco Bell hotel, right? Easy brief, easy sale. So let me show you a video of the hotel, and then I'll talk to you a little bit about the resort, or the results, not the resort.
Build your own breakfast tacos. So friggin' epic.
Okay, it's pretty cool, right? So we're really proud of this. It was awesome, as my children would say. It was epic and totally savage. So but the thing about it was like so immersive. I mean, every scene in the video is like something else. Somebody's getting their nails done with the bell on there. They had hair braiding that was like done in the style of like the cinnamon swirls. They had, you could get in like a bath of hot sauce, the yoga mats, like every single piece delivered on the brief, right? Which was like, let these people live this brand inside and out. And of course they were eating the food and they were doing the stuff, and it was amazing. So just two things. One that was really interesting, and they charged people, and they paid, and they came, was the first one. We had a whole war room set up about when it launched. They had all these people in a room like, okay, well, what if nobody buys it? Like, what are we gonna do? Crisis messaging, et cetera. So they all go in the room, they close the door, the bell opens for sale, and boom, literally 2 minutes later, every single Edelman employee walks out. I was like, we're done, it's sold out, great. So it was extremely successful, and I think they're gonna do it again. The earned strategy was really interesting too. This didn't, go out through advertising, it was through earned, so there were 5 different media touch points. They announced that they were gonna do it, they announced when it was going to go live. There was a huge influencer strategy, as you saw as well, that generated a tremendous amount of coverage. So extremely successful, extremely fun program to work on from this year.
Cool. It's very hard for me to imagine what it would be like to just eat Taco Bell for like 3 straight days, but it'd be fun to be in that hotel. Anyway, the last case that we're going to show you kind of speaks to that idea of being fast as news, and really, when the unexpected happens, that's where we come in and try to save the day. Let me get a show of hands. How many of you guys watch This Is Us? Cool. All right. Well, we know who's going to cry on Tuesday. Oh, it's cool. I can see. We know who's going to cry on Tuesday. But you will probably remember, spoiler, if those of you who don't watch, but you probably remember that fateful night when a cooking mishap burned down the Pearson house, leading to the tragic death of beloved, romantic, heroic dad, Jack Pearson. It was a tragedy, and as happens these days, when you get upset, you turn to the internet and you cry out against the terrible crockpot. So obviously that happened the night before, primetime television. By 9 a.m. the next morning, 618 articles had already been posted, and social media was obviously in a rage frenzy. People were talking about boycotting this brand. So yeah, you'll see in the video. Anyway, our brief here was we obviously needed to come in and fix this very, very real anger at a very, very fake crime. We've showed you a lot of data today. We've talked a lot about sort of the research that we do. Not every project that we work on gets the opportunity to be research fueled, but in this case, it was so obvious how powerful and how much weight the actions of Jack Pearson carried with not only the audience, but the media and like the surrounding culture. So we brought him back to life because we wanted to shake off the blame and share a little bit of forgiveness. And we'll show you kind of what that looked like here. Or maybe we won't. I don't know. Let me hit the play button.
This week, there was an absolutely gut-wrenching episode of This Is Us. The father, Jack, turns off the family's old, janky crockpot. It shorts out, bursts into flames, and the house is incinerated. This Is Us fans were traumatized, and they turned their fury against their crockpots.
New at 10, crock-pot controversy.
We have finally learned the cause of Jack Pearson's
Some viewers are actually throwing out this
very upsetting for a lot of people. Like a lot of people, and in a big way.
This year, I think we should all take a deep breath, find the ability to forgive, and remind ourselves that There is no difference so great we can't overcome it.
I own a crock pot. I love crock pot.
I want to give you a housewarming gift.
Oh my goodness.
So it's going to go on that shelf.
What?
I enjoy a good crock pot. I do.
So, yeah, so Laura talks about having a war room for a crisis situation. I am dreading the day when I have to do my first one of those. But hopefully it ends up as fun as this. Anyway, you saw in the video, right, the pickup that this got, both first negative, then after sort of leaning into it on the more positive side. There was a sales number in there, which I think translated to about 3% growth in their sales just from this kind of response. So obviously, again, not only that that idea of sort of like getting the viral nature of this out there, but it actually does result in, you know, changing behavior and influencing behavior, and it can be incredibly powerful. And luckily, that friendship is saved between Jack and Crockpot. So that is, I believe, everything we have. So we will take. Thank you. We will take some questions, but we have a second mic and we're recording this, so I was told to say, don't ask them until you get a mic. How do we want to do this? You guys want to come back up? We'll just do one of these.
Good morning.
Hi.
Thank you for coming. My name's Danielle Scott. I'm a second-year experience designer. And before I came to the Brandcenter, actually, I spent a lot of time with therapists in the community doing social work. And my mind never ceases to be amazed by how much a brand is like a person, you know?
Yep.
There's personal growth, there's pain, anniversaries, a relationship. You guys are talking about trust a lot, and I'm just wondering. Yeah, good. Take a seat because this might be a lot. Seriously.
Not taking my colleague's chair out from under her. Yes, sorry. Go ahead.
That's good though too. Where is the line between a whole person and what a space a brand takes up? Like, does a brand have a soul? And if so, who's pulling the levers on that one? It's not a real like question that you can answer,
Yeah.
but I just would like to hear, I'd like to hear your thoughts on it. Certainly.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, one of our
I
classmates
know.
is actually doing a project similar to this, and we've just been talking about like the parallels there. It's a whole person.
I'll take a stab at this. You know, I think it would be hard to say that a brand as kind of like an amorphous entity is ever going to be a whole human. Who knows? I could be wrong. That's true, they might, but that's too legal for me. But I do think that it's important that the people who make up the brand and the people who activate for the brand treat it as if it were a person, right? Because it is more and more about that sort of human voice and that human experience. So even if the Crock-Pot logo or the Crock-Pot machine does not have a soul, which I am willing to argue about, you know, you still have to come out and communicate to people like a person. And that's where I think, you know, to maybe try and answer that question, right? It's like you have to act like a person even if you aren't one. Yeah? All right.
I think that was very beautiful. Oh, yeah, go ahead. You're ready.
So what we did last week that worked really well is let them raise their hand, ask a question, and can you repeat the question back?
because my voice kind of carries through well. We know that. So I was thinking about brand trust, and I think it's wonderful that like you do external things, and it's great that like if they donate to causes. I think like the antitrust maybe example would be Chick-fil-A. Like they're really strong about their anti-gay views, and they donate to anti-gay stuff and all that. But I was also wondering, sometimes what keeps me from going for a brand is their external practices, their external business practices, like how things are manufactured, and exploiting the people who are doing that. And I wonder if that's something that we can address. You know, I think we feel like we maybe get stuck with the external, like let's do external, but also can we suggest to them, hey, maybe don't do like almost slavery with your people who are making what we buy, and then sometimes very hard to because I think every brand and every company nowadays is exploiting their workers. And so where did you get that shirt?
He told
From Express.
Yeah, he promised to wear a cool polo shirt today, so.
Best question I get all day.
So the question for anyone who couldn't hear it was, we are in communications and marketing, and that's usually where our clients would be. But a lot of what informs trust is actual business practices, and I think a lot of the trust fails that I showed you guys were examples where there was a nice communications gesture, but it was in contrast with the company's business practices. I think it's something that we struggle with in terms of navigating client organizations, but we have had success in kind of starting to establish a set of criteria for ideas to say, can we actually back this up? And if you really believe that you can back this up, like here are the things you may need to change within your organization to do so. We recently rolled out in our DC office kind of something called bias breakers, which was meant for evaluating creative ideas or really any idea to make sure that the company's actions back up their words. And if they don't, that's a gut check moment with the client to caution them against moving forward because they're putting their reputation even further at risk. Fortunately, what's cool about Edelman is we also have an advisory set practice, and so we can always connect them to those colleagues on if you want to make some sort of more substantive change in the way that you operate, how you would do that. But I do think that's where people are failing. Even when I started at Edelman, which was like over 10 years ago, it was fine to just make a statement, to be like, I stand for this and I believe in this, but people are doing their homework now, and I think it's taken a lot of brands by surprise. But it's good, and it's for the betterment of society. But that's a great question.
I would just add just an interesting thing that's happened in our business in the past like 18 months is a lot of times clients will call us and say, our ad firm developed this ad campaign. Is this, like, can you do an assessment on how clean our house is? Basically, like, is this credible? And are we going to get, are we going to get hung up around it reputationally? So it's been kind of an interesting offshoot. Okay, who's got the next question? Go ahead.
I was going to say, it's kind of pretty thin off that. It's like our country is just so divided with everything nowadays. And, when a brand's picking one side or the other, like, say, a abortion person, we're pretty on the middle, does that alienate the entire other side of the story? Like, does that alienate that entire other consumer base?
Yeah, so the question was, since our country's so divided, if a brand takes a stand, how, do you risk alienating the other half of, whoever's against you on whatever issue it is? It's super interesting to do this presentation like in DC, because if you do this presentation in Chicago, everybody's like, great, purpose, totally. When you do it in DC, they're like, well, but half my fundraisers are pro this, or half are against this. And, it's about the word stand, right? So what we counsel clients on is to take a stand. That doesn't have to be on an issue. So like the WNBA, I think, did that well, right? They had a variety of different causes, and the cause wasn't as important as the act of giving back, right? So that's kind of one way to thread it. But cause, or taking a stand doesn't always mean taking a stand on the issue, but absolutely, it's a risk. And I think you see with brands like Nike, they definitely had the issue on, how clean their house was in the back, but it was worth it. It drove their business goals, even though it did alienate a huge component of, their base. Yep.
Piggybacking off that question, I'm doing a project on girls'
yeah.
Yeah, so there's this big thing where Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts are just losing a ton of participants over the years. Boy Scouts turned into Cub Scouts, taking in the young girls.
Yes.
And the women's so Girl Scouts got very upset. They decided to change their angle more to a women's empowerment angle. But I've been seeing a lot of things where they get asked a lot of times if they stand with Planned Parenthood and organizations like that that kind of more of this political stance, and they continuously say no. And it seems like because they're saying women's empowerment, just kind of using like kind of big role models as their voice, but not really leaning into like the more political side. Because they are an old organization, it doesn't seem like it's really affecting or like doing too much. So I'm just curious, is that brand voice is saying, hey, we're doing something, and they are like they're investing in STEM, but if it needs to be more than that to like change like this course that's occurring for them right now.
Yeah, so I have a thought on that, and then if you guys, so the question was, for a brand like Girl Scouts, it's like a legacy brand who, basically got challenged by Boy Scouts, candidly was somebody they did not expect to come for their base. How do you, and then, you say you're about women's empowerment, but there isn't, I think you're saying the depth of sort of data behind that. I think exactly, you're right. I think to me the super challenging thing is, we've worked on that a bit, is that I think we work on a lot, like I work on Hilton, that's a 100-year-old brand, they had their 100-year anniversary this year. I think it's the same, I think Girl Scouts is around the same. I think it's so challenging, like you've always, even if you're a legacy brand with like a huge depth, things are changing so quickly. Like the one truth in brand is you're going to be completely challenged by somebody else, so you've got to be ready. And to me just the shock that now Boy Scouts is coming for Girl Scouts, and there was I read this fascinating article about how a lot of Boy Scout leaders and Girl Scout leaders were married to each other, and then the husband would just ask the wife for the Girl Scout list, and then they would give them the list, and the entire troop was gone. There were so many things, I think, in that left the brand a bit flat-footed because they just weren't expecting to be challenged. So I think that part of it to me was a very interesting lesson in being prepared and really understanding your base, and not assuming they'll always be there.
Yeah, to build on it a little bit more, it's something that I see a lot. My background is strategic planning, and so people always think it's sacrilegious when I say this, but I think in recent years, I've seen there's almost an overemphasis on audience at the expense of what your brand is trying to stand for. I don't know if this is the situation with Girl Scouts. I haven't looked into their specific situation, but brands will say, this is what my audience wants to hear from me, but they haven't really honed in what is their particular angle on it or what is their mission in that space. And so always keeping that balance of, yes, you have to be in touch with your audience, you have to understand what matters to them, but you have to understand your connection point, and it has to be authentic. It may be that for them, they're like, women empowerment, obviously that makes sense, but they haven't maybe done a deeper dig into what does that mean for us? And does that have a political application, or are we more focused on something that is about education and opportunity? So that is just a watch out that I've seen quite a bit. The more data there is, the more audience data, the more people are so laser focused on that they lose sight of what they have to say. So, did you have anything to?
No, I think the point about sort of understanding what the stance means to you is really key. And the only thing I was going to say is that when we do the brand identity work that we do, there's a framework that looks at this sort of triple Venn diagram between audience truth, brand truth, and cultural truth. And so without really knowing those three elements, you're going to fall flat in some respect. So thinking through, what does our audience need? What is the state of the culture right now? And how will the culture react if we say or do a certain thing? And then what is true to us? Honestly, that should probably be the first thing. That's the easiest to get at. So, being able to sort of find the center of that trifecta is really key.
And I think it's
Great question. So the question was about influencers. You know, how do you know when it's the right risk to take, basically just because they're people and in some cases largely untested, and they take on reputational risk. So it's a great question. So literally the spectrum of influencers that we look at is like this long, right? And this is like a lady who authored a cookbook, and this is like, not Kendall Jenner, poor woman, she's gotten so much, but this is like Beyonce, okay? And we literally have specialists who do like deep dive research, opposition research, all sorts of things into them. I think what's super interesting to me about the use of influencers is there's a different kind of type, right? And how you're using them for your brand. When I look at clients who are using celebrities in their ad campaigns, that is like an exhaustive process that costs a lot of money, takes a lot of time, and involves interviews and all sorts of other things. In PR, we get to use influencers a different way, which is we get to use people that are more tapped into the culture. We don't have the brand association as much, right? Then you're paying them $10 million and they're in your ad campaign and they're Jennifer Garner for Capital One or Kevin Hart, that kind of thing. We get to use them as like, if they're on speed with the news and they're bookable and there's a bit of relevance back to us, we can sort of have that quick moment in time and then move on. So the spectrum depends, I think, on how you're using them and how deeply affiliated they are with you and with your brand. But it's an excellent point, and it's always a risk. Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry. One other thing I wanted to say on that too was like, it never goes perfectly. So being the kind of person who thinks about those risks and helps the team plan for those eventualities, it's a good skill set to have.
Probably is the right answer, or what I think the right answer is too. I think that's what always happens is, but that's what moves the industry forward. So I think at some point this is going to be standard operating procedure. I don't know how many of you guys saw this, but the Business Roundtable, which is this like association of all of these like leading Fortune 100 companies, CEOs, made a statement recently that they now consider all stakeholders to be the priority, not just investors, which, I mean, when I was a business school undergrad, and people always said, oh, our only responsibility is to our investors. And so all of these CEOs have come out and said, actually, everyone is our stakeholder, and that's how they're viewing things. So I do think we're moving to a place where it's gonna be standard operating procedure, which is great. And then I'm sure there'll be a new bar set to do even more that will be coming in the next 5-10 years.
And I would just add to that, in like the 20 years of trust data, what is not changing is that there is a hole that, we study 4 institutions: business, government, the media, and NGOs, and none of those guys are trusted. So there's a gap, and brands are coming into the gap. I think it's less about will brands be out, and so it's more like will brands be out and somebody else be in, maybe. But we're, you can't control anything in this world. Do you know what I mean? You can't, it doesn't matter what side you're on. You can't control the government. You can't control business. Like the only thing you can control is your wallet, right? And that's what everybody's trying to vote with, basically, is what we see. So I think brands will keep doing that until somebody else maybe replaces them. But I'm not a futurist. I'm just a PR person. Yep.
So with trust and now, is there ever a case that you guys had where trust was too tarnished or to rebuild or regain?
Yes, but we can't talk about it. No, I'm just kidding. This is why we're out here trying to tell everyone to become trusted so that you can be resilient in a crisis, because it does, that's something that's new to this study. The question was, can you ever be too tarnished from an incident or a problem to gain back your trust? Look, people are pretty forgiving. The news cycle is pretty short. You can increase trust by working against those 4 dimensions for sure. But it's much better that you're a trusted brand, that you start before you have a problem, because it's really hard to come back the other way. And that's like a lot of what Jen was showing, is like the more you act with purpose, the more you're an honest broker, the more you engage with stakeholders, the better you are. It's literally proven. You'll survive a crisis better. Yep. Hi.
I'm Alex Reed. I'm a first-year CBN. Oh, sure. My question was, you mentioned the timeliness, fast as news, and when a company's not in a crisis mode, I'm sure their motivation internally is a bit maybe less speedy to get something out in the marketplace. So do you guys have any processes in place to bring your clients along to hit on a moment in time, or do you have perhaps like a shelf life of like this trend might be too short to tack on to? Yeah.
Well, one thing that it's actually not even from a planning perspective, but one thing that we've established for a lot of our larger clients is what we just call like newsrooms, and that's not a super original thing. Lots of agencies do that, but we staff them with ex-journalists, which is people who have an inherent sense of what is news and what is not news, and who can work really quickly because they're always working on a deadline of just about a couple of hours. And then we structure it so that we give them beats like real reporters, focus on certain issues, all different topic areas, so that they can pretty quickly parse out that trend. So it's always easier to react more quickly when you have a team that's always looking. Clients that do not invest in that, it's much harder. There's much more of a scramble to even find the opportunity to act and then to move quickly once it's found. So for clients who really are committed to being responsive to things that are happening on social or in the kind of earned media broadly, we always recommend having a dedicated group of people who are always looking out and always ready to act. So hopefully that partially answers your question. Any other questions? Oh, one all the way up top.
I know individuals in the public eye sometimes face concerns of, I guess for lack of a better word, pandering to one community or another. So I guess my question is kind of how often do brands have to deal with that? And I guess, is it more consistent of a strategy for a brand to take a stance on something and say, this is our stance, and then work with those who come there, or to try and meet their consumer at wherever their issue is, and if they take that route, what's the line between doing that and potentially being accused of pandering to a community?
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit what I was saying before. Oh, sorry. The question is, a lot of times brands are accused of pandering to a specific audience, a specific community. Is it better to have your stand in advance and then work with the communities to execute it, or to go where the community is and kind of back out of it? A little bit of what I was saying before is you have to know what you stand for and who's aligned with that. But I also think there is a benefit of taking time to engage with the communities who you care about, who use your product, who might be your employees, who might be impacted by the work that you do, to understand their concerns, to kind of remove some biases they might have and see things that they wouldn't have seen before. So it's a little bit of a give and take. I think you have to have clear purpose. When I think about Nike, they've always been about individual excellence and courage, and so I think the connection to Colin Kaepernick made inherent sense for them, but it definitely was a business risk for them as well. And so I don't know if people at Nike were thinking about the issues that Colin Kaepernick was active in at the level that they are now, but by paying attention to what mattered to that community, they were able to say, this is something that aligns with what we believe in, and we want to take a stand even if people are going to burn our shoes. We don't need those customers anyway. So I just think it's a little bit of both, because you don't want to have a blind spot also where you're missing out on issues that you wouldn't see otherwise.
I'll be quick. So, geez, just take all the way down to my comment. I was gonna say too, I think like this, part of me has like a very cynical response to that, which is just like, someone's always gonna hate what you do and criticize what you do. To Jen's point, it's about really understanding the people who matter to you. The other point I would make is, I put a slide together that said the same thing like just the other day, but it's like, this work is more than just a stunt. So if you go out and you do like one big flashy thing, and then you're like, bye, that was it, that's our investment, then people are they're gonna accuse you of like being fake, right? It doesn't feel authentic, you just went out one time, you didn't commit. So that's where it's like, how do we continue to, it doesn't always have to be so big, it doesn't have to be like a mass media kind of attention event, but how do we continue to engage those communities? How do we continue to act on this stance that we've taken? And that makes you come off a lot more authentic, because it's more than just garnering the eyeballs, right? It's like, it's about actually continuing to make something better. So that was my piece.
It was worth it. And the part that I was going to add, which is really worth it, no, I'm just kidding, is that that in the study we did last year on this, like, I want to say, like, the spectrum for purpose is like this long, and here's Nike, right? And like, we are not suggesting to every client, and ACT's probably like the rare client that should take that stand for all the reasons that Jen talked about. But there's also there's a lot of other ways, like, Nissan did this purpose campaign in the UK that was all around a partnership about beach cleanups. And they did it because their car had, the car that they were launching, which is like a very difficult slog. If you launch a car, it's like features and functions, features and functions, features and functions. Everyone's got the same stuff. This car had a really unique, it's more of a truck, really unique functionality that like made it perfect to go around on beaches. So they partnered with the beach cleanup organization. So that's not about Nissan's purpose, but that's about the purpose of the car and having like cultural relevancy, right? So that's another, it's like, when you're thinking about brand purpose, it's not always the societal impact. It can be, you know, more of what WNBA did, which was around like, you know, it's all about empowering women, and that's as much about getting little girls to the game as it is donating to causes. You know, culture's kind of in the middle, and then the societal impact is kind of way on the right. You're welcome. Okay, any other questions? No? Thank you guys for being so engaged. It's a real pleasure being here, and all this fascinating data is on our website. If you need to use it for anything, you're welcome to. Thank you.